My name is Mark Gostkiewicz. Welcome to Beginner Beekeeping. Let's see, I've got the room, you can't see it, but there's like lots of little props in here that I'm going to be pulling up and bringing into view whenever we need them. But yeah, so we'll do a little screen sharing so that you can see the presentation that goes along with this. When I teach this class, it's generally like a flow state of mind. There's tons of things that you're going to learn in this class. Basically, about the first hour of this is going to be 45 minutes or an hour. It's just bee biology and knowing how do bees reproduce and how do they live and what do they do, to talk about them. And then we jump into talking about, well, how do you get bees for your beehive? And then we end with all the equipment, all the stuff that you could think about getting for your beehive. So with that said, welcome. A copy of this, this document, this PowerPoint, and a little handout that has tons and tons of links is going to be shared with you through the library here. So they'll likely be sending that out. It'll likely be something that when you watch this later on, maybe a recording of this, if you want to learn more, there's going to be lots of live links to lots of resources afterwards. So with that, at our little farm, we started out as a farm growing veggies and everything. But as you see, what we've kind of done over the years is I'm a teacher. I'm an 8th grade math teacher. My wife is also an 8th grade special ed teacher. We have transitioned from growing veggies to teaching classes on how the backyard, the backyard gardener can turn their home into, a lush place that has lots and lots of diversity, and grow food in your own backyard. So this is a list of a whole bunch of classes that we teach. Some of them are already available like digitally. If you can purchase the class and we send you a recording of it, and all the digital resources. And then when this whole COVID thing is over, we'll certainly be hosting them live again. News. My wife and I finally got approved for a loan to build an addition onto our house. Now, it's like a multi-purpose space. Part of it is going to have a garage underneath, yay. But above it, the finished room above it will be an educational area where we don't have to have like people in our cellar anymore or out in the greenhouse. We'll actually have like a space with like a little kitchenette area where we can actually like teach, and it's separate from our living space. So that's coming. Really excited about that. Okay, so I'm going to jump into what is a hive, and how do they reproduce, how do they thrive, and everything. So part of this is thinking through. Well, I'm gonna this mason bees. If we actually kind of come back to my face, mason bees. This is not the type of honeybee that is a honeybee. This is a solitary bee that lives natively, though. So part of talking about honeybees is also talk about, well, what isn't a honeybee? Wasps, hornets, and your mason bees and your bumblebees, those are not the same as a honeybee. Honeybees were brought here from Europe, and are used as like livestock, yes, for pollination and to harvest crops and everything. But honeybees have been brought here to as a form of livestock. So that is how they're categorized. Check with your local town, and I know in Connecticut, you've got to have your hives registered and everything. Mason bees, however, one thing I want to say about this is that, like, go ahead, set up a little mason bee hive in your yard. They live with only a few thousand feet from where they were born. They live their whole life cycle and then lay eggs within that area. So if you've got like your own like little home orchard or anything, I'm trying to see like little mason beehives, you'll see these as like tubes or like little drilled out like logs and stuff like that. They're super simple to set up in your own yard. And what it does is it encourages and gives it a natural space for a mason bee to live in your yard and pollinate the plants in your yard. So if you have a little home orchard, or if you have flowers or whatever that you want pollinated, your local pollinators, your mason bees, your bumblebees, even ants and stuff, that like they are going to be the ones pollinating a lot of the stuff in your yard. Honeybees, they go out miles. So just because you have a beehive in your yard, a honeybee hive in your yard, doesn't mean that they're going to be there pollinating your crops. They're going to be flying way out and finding like a huge bloom of clover or a huge bloom of dandelions or whatever, you know, tons and tons of different flowers that they're searching out for, but they're going to be looking for mass quantities of them to bring back that nectar to the colony. So mason bees are solitary bees. They are our native bees. They are very important, and it's important for all of us to try and keep our native pollinators around. Mason bees are one of them. Bumblebees, you can learn how to like support their health as well. But then when we think about honeybees, as we jump into that, well, what makes a honeybee different? It's the fact that they live socially. They live together with thousands of their relatives, thousands of their sisters, all in one colony, in one hive. You'll hear me use the phrase colony and hive interchangeably. When I'm talking about the colony, I'm talking about the whole group, like almost like me. I am a colony of like all the living cells in me. When I talk about the hive, I'm typically talking about the thing that they live in. So it includes not only the colony, but it would include all the honeycomb, all of the brood, the babies that are in there, and the structure that they're living in. So when I say hive, I'm talking about the whole thing, the holistic grouping. When I say the colony, I'm talking about the bees themselves. So as we go through, there's going to be a lot of language, but the nice thing about having this recorded is that you can go back, you can watch it again. Okay, so that's just this first little slide here. So we want to think about what is a hive. It's a place to store honey, pollen, and propolis. These are the three main things that they are storing in the hive. Now the honey is coming from nectar. So, by the way, so what you're seeing on your screen right now, those little tubes, that is a birdhouse that I built that also has the tubes for those mason bees in it. And what you can see is, maybe I can get my cursor here and hopefully you see my cursor. That right there, what you're seeing is the mason bee like flew and dive bombed into a flower, and it caught pollen all over its little hairy body. And then it goes into this little tube, and she, you know, she's a queen, and she takes the pollen off of her body, and it's got a little nectar mixed in and everything, and she packs it in the tube. And then she goes to a little, and then she lays an egg in it. And then she goes down to a local little stream or a puddle or whatever and grabs some mud. And then she masons over that little section and encases it and creates like a little cocoon for that egg. So she gave the egg a food source and gave it protection from the elements. And what she does is she fills up the tube with that pollen, but you know, pollen packed in their egg, and then pollen, egg, and then masonry, pollen, egg, and then masonry, pollen, egg, and masonry, until it's, you know, it fills up the whole tube. So that's what you're seeing right there. And you're also seeing some like little leaf cutter bees that are taking stuff. So right here, why do I have this picture here? It's for that little blob right there. On the back of that bee's leg is a little globule of pollen that bee is collecting. Now the bee is going around, and yeah, it's probably sucking out little bits of nectar from that sunflower. So this is just a picture taken in my yard. It's not the best picture or anything, but they're also packing on their legs pollen and bringing it back. And so what you're going to see is pollen of many different colors. You know, so we've got almost like a white pollen here, and then like a yellow or creamy colored pollen here, and then an orange, and then this dark burnt orange colored pollen, all packed on the backs of their legs. They are bringing that in as a protein source to feed their young. As adults, they don't really, you know, need the pollen, but they use it to raise their young as a high protein source. So they're bringing in nectar, which they convert into honey, which is their sugar source that they're using for the vast majority of their energy. However, they do need some fats and some proteins to make the rest of the biology that helps them function. So that's what they're bringing into the hive. Why is it different colors? It's different colors because it's coming from different plants. The nectar that they bring in can be different colors. It's going to be different colors. The pollen they bring in is going to be different colors. And we'll eventually talk about Propolis as well. This is like a cool little thing that Eversweet Apiaries put out. They have several of these, and it's like this neat little graphic organizer of possible different types of plants and what their pollen could look like and what their honey could look like. And it just shows you the diversity of what the bees are bringing into their hive. So I think before we jump into combs of different sizes, another thing I want you to think about is another thing they're bringing into the hive is propolis. We'll talk about that. We'll see this in action. Actually, I'll grab something right now. So honeycomb right here. So I've got to switch from here, there, to just me. Hopefully this is just me now. Good, I'm getting a nod there. It's just me. So what we, as I kind of bring this to the camera, you see how this is all red here. I'm also going to try and find, let's see, this bar right here. I want you to see how one is stained really dark red, the wood. I want you to look at the wood. And the wood on here, less so. This one had just been started. But the red that you see there, those are tree resins that the honeybees are bringing into the hive. And they're using that to seal up air gaps and to coat the whole inside of the hive. And one thing that you're going to get from this class is that this is not a class where like it's one and done and now you know how to keep bees. This is going to be a class where we go through patterns and learning, and we change the way that you think about bees and reframe it so that you're thinking about honeybees in a different way. And that might have already started already when we're talking about mason bees and wasps and hornets versus honeybees that live in colonies. Another thing that might change your mind is that the hive itself, when they are coating, literally staining the wood inside of this hive and covering every surface with this propolis, what they're doing is sterilizing the hive. And why are they sterilizing the hive? They're sterilizing it because they're turning it into a womb to raise their young. And that's the first time we're going to reframe what you think about honeybees. When you go out to your hive, your box that's on the ground or whatever type of hive you have, or if you have bees living in a tree, when you open that up and you go into it, you are going into their womb where they are raising their young. And so this step of putting these tree resins inside the hive, it not only helps them control airflow within it by filling up little gaps where air can, escape here and there, but it also ends up creating a sterilized environment for them. They are constantly cleaning the inside of the hive, taking out dead bodies, taking out invasive little beetles that might get in there, or larvae or whatever from other insects that are in there. They're constantly cleaning the surface and making it sterile. And so again, they're getting tree resins like tree saps and stuff like that and bringing it in. And because they are antifungal, antibacterial tree resins, they are naturally using this in the hive to help create that womb-like environment. So the other thing that they're doing is inside that hive, they are maintaining temperatures up in the 90s and humidity up in the 90s. Why? Because it's a womb. They are trying to raise young in every single one of these cells, and they need a warm, humid environment in order to do that. So anytime you open up a hive and you are disturbing the humidity or disturbing the temperature and everything, you want to go in and inspect your hive and then get the heck out of there. There's no need to like bumble around and look at every little thing. Go in and look at what you need, what you came to look for, and then get out because you're disturbing that microenvironment that they're trying to control. So now we'll go back to screen share a little bit because it's going to, again, it's just going to keep going back and forth between me and sharing parts of the screen for the slideshow. Okay, combs of different sizes. Now, what I'm saying by combs of different sizes is that I've got a couple ways of this. Not only are like the cells of different sizes, but the combs themselves. Honeybees are cavity nesters. What that means is that they take over a cavity. They go find a hollow tree. They find a beehive that's a box that's empty inside, relatively empty. And what do? They fill it. They fill it with honeycomb that just fills the area. I've cut out honeybee colonies from the sides of a barn or the side of a building. And what do they do with that like little narrow, long, tall space? where like insulation would have been, but it's not because it's a barn. And it's just like framed in, and there's just siding on one side, and there's like the interior siding on the other side. Well, what do? They fill that cavity. They fill that space with honeycomb. And so that's why this honeycomb itself, that now you're kind of like looking up here, this came from one of these hives here, these horizontal hives, where the honeycomb is in a trapezoidal shape because the hive is of a trapezoidal shape. So 9 out of 10 beekeepers are going to get like a box style hive, not one of these types of hives, but we do talk about them in this. So again, if you take a regular rectangular box and you limit the space that they have to make honeycomb in there by putting in something like this, which, why would you do that? There's specific reasons why you do that, but not in the normal world of beekeeping. This is to illustrate the fact that if you give them a smaller space, they will fill it with honeycomb, but they will only fill it within the space that they're provided. So that's why here what you have is you have a trapezoidal comb from a top bar hive. Okay, top bar hives are one of the types of hives that I fell in love with. We'll talk about why, but again, 9 out of 10 beekeepers, they're going to have hives with these frames. And so the honeycomb behind here that has a wooden frame. So basically, there are these wooden frames that are in a hollow box, and the frames give the bees the support to build their honeycomb on. And why is that handy? That's super handy because the beekeeper can take those frames out, put them in another box, and they're guaranteed to fit because they're uniform all around the world. You know, these Langstroth boxes. We'll talk about that. That's way towards the end. But because you're giving them a rectangular box to fill, they make rectangular honeycombs. There's no reason why they have to make honeycombs of these shapes. Now look at this. You know, as you know, what they can do is, so this is an air hole that, why did the honeybees build that? I don't know. It's because they probably needed the air to flow in a particular way, and that they are doing that within that womb where they're controlling humidity and they're controlling the temperature. They're also controlling the airflow. They're pushing air out of the hive through the entrance and pulling fresh air in, and they are moving air with their wings. Thousands of bees are beating their wings, moving the air inside of the hive. So the colony is working together in the hive to create that womb environment. So why do we have this hole here? We have that hole there because they needed to create a little hole there for airspace to flow at the top of the honey bar. Do you see this all the time? Not all the time, but you'll see it in a natural honeycomb thing. We're going to end up talking about 3 types of hives: a Langstroth, which is what 9 out of 10 beekeepers are going to use, a top bar hive, and a Waré hive. Now, those last 2, top bar hive and Waré hive, they are hives that just use a wooden top bars on top rather than frames. They are a frameless, foundationless system. You'll learn what that is. Why do I teach about them? I teach about them because I know a lot about them. That's how I keep bees. But most beekeepers are not going to want to keep bees in those types of hives. So I want you to know the pros and cons. I don't want your first hive to be a top bar hive or a Waré hive, and then you be frustrated, you know, because you didn't think of certain things. Rather, if it is something that's your style, I want you to know the pros and the cons and the things to look out for. And we'll also learn how to work with regular Langstroth boxes. So this rectangular comb that you're seeing on your screen right now, what you're seeing is, this is honeycomb. So that's capped honey. And what I'm doing is I'm prepping it. You see the knife on the side, I'm cutting that comb out and selling it as whole comb honey. So there's no, all of this wax honeycomb was made by the bees themselves. And so what do we have here? So now what we have is we have brood. What you're seeing is up here, I want you to notice how the cappings on this honeycomb are different than the cappings here. The cappings here are light colored because there's honey behind them, and it's just a very thin bit of wax over the top. While these cells, they're a little domed and they're thicker and everything. That's because they have baby bees inside. Now, when we look at that, these have baby worker bees inside. This isn't, you know, a beekeeper that opens up its hive and sees, bam, the whole thing is just filled with baby bees in a honeycomb like this. This is something that we love to see because it shows a good laying pattern, and it shows that it's like compact and dense, and that lots of baby bees are going to be hatching out to become the workers, the next generation within the hive. We'll talk about life cycles. Okay, but right now what we're talking about is honeycomb. They make combs of different sizes to fill the spaces. Now this is a Warre style hive. That's W-A-R-R-E with like a little accento over the E. It's a French type of hive. So what you're going to see is you're going to see several pictures now in the slides of my Warre hives. These are box hives, but these do not have frames on them. So look at those honeycombs. Those combs are relatively nice and straight and parallel. But look at the next ones. Oh, not so straight, not so parallel. So here's the thing. As a beekeeper, I love looking at this. This is beauty to me because of who I am. I like to see what bees naturally do to fill the space. Did they fill it all with nice straight little combs? No, they filled it with, you know, these wonky, weird, wavy combs. And look at the next one. Oh man, they went diagonal with it. So here's the thing. As a beekeeper, if you're not ready for this, this can be very frustrating, because what this means is all of those honeycombs at the top of them, since they're not frames, they are actually locked in together now, and you can't take out any honeycombs except for cutting them out. And you're not really going to cut them out of a living hive. You cut them out when the bees are dead or something like that, or later on, or you'd smoke all the bees out and harvest it. This type of hive is one where you get these weird but beautiful honeycombs that are natural, just like what you would see in a hollow tree, in a tree hollow. But they are not going to be a hive that's easily inspectable. It's going to be a set it and forget it kind of hive. You set it, you give them the volume that they need to start off, and then you do a few inspections like this, where you're just kind of like lifting it and looking at the bottom of it and seeing if it looks like a healthy hive. So it's for the more adventurous. This is again, and you see this is brand new honeycomb, how it's not stained any color. This is nice, bright, white, flexible comb. This is what it looks like as they're filling the box. And look at, oh my God, look at this. This is crazy. We've got a little queen cup, which we'll talk about here. And we've got all this wavy honeycomb here. And then this worker brood comb here. So the cells, the actual cells in the honeycomb have different uses. And part of it is the type of cell that's there kind of determines the way that it's going to be used in general. So what do I mean by cells of many uses? We're going to see several pictures here. I want you to look at this picture, and I want you to try and identify. Can you identify where there's honey? If you're seeing like right up here at the top, yes, that's honey. Do you see how that transitions into just nectar that hasn't been capped over? All right. Can you see any other places where the honeycomb is capped over, where there's some babies being raised right now, some female worker bees being raised? Yeah, right here, down here, there's some capped over. And then there's this bright yellow. What is that? If you're thinking pollen, you got it. I love showing this picture because this is pulling out one honeycomb and showing that each cell, even though they're all these hexagons and everything, the bees use them for many different reasons. Storing pollen, storing nectar, which gets evaporated down into honey, and then also using them to raise their young. Okay, now they're not storing propolis, they're not storing tree resins in those cells, not at all. Remember, that's used on the wooden surfaces of the hive. Okay, so this is, I don't think we need to look at this other than to see that, like, it's again another example of a multi-purpose cell. This is the same picture that I showed you in the beginning: capped honey, uncapped honey, pollen, and capped brood, a multi-purpose one. So what I'm going to do is transition now to just me. I'm going to exit my screen sharing, and now I've got some honeycombs to show you. So the way they make a comb, a honeycomb, is, now if you're giving them a frame, a wooden frame and a frame like that, this has a plastic foundation in it. It has a plastic thing that the humans made that has the honeycomb imprint on it. And the bees will add wax onto that and draw it out. It's called drawing it out, pulling out and creating the cells right on that structure. Now, with that, each cell is roughly the same size. All right, and so they'll use this to raise their young and everything. Let's see. This is like, I've done this workshop outside, and when I have these frames that this actually has like honey and stuff like this, I get like bees flying over at me, And like, I've been like stung in like little workshops because I didn't know there was a bee on the thing. And then I'm like, you know, whatever. It's nice to do this inside. So inside this is a fully drawn out frame. And what am I seeing here? I'm seeing capped honey here. And I'm also seeing down here, do you see this right? Let's see. You see this right on the edge? That little cell, that is called a queen cup. Now, I've got honey on my fingers. Now that little queen cup that's at the end, it's a different size cell than all the others. And that is going to signal to the queen that if she runs out of room laying here, then she could lay here. And that egg that gets laid here will be raised into a queen. We'll talk about that. But sticky hands. Okay. It's like I should find a different honeycomb for that, but it's actually kind of fun if we were doing this in person to like pass these around. Doing this with the camera is a little different. So if you give them a frame with foundation in it, now you could also give them a wax foundation. This is just a little strip. It could be a full sheet that would fill that whole frame. Again, instead of the plastic, it could be actually made out of wax that's been printed and pressed into that shape. Okay, into that hexagonal shape. If you're starting out with a length-strip hive, with a box hive with frames, you are likely going to use some sort of foundation, whether it's wax foundation or plastic foundation. In the world of using these foundations, you typically don't mix them. You go with all one or all the other, all wax foundations or all plastic foundations. That's just one word of advice. Now, beekeepers, so I do have these are just empty. They haven't been drawn on, but if we get close, so I'm gonna try to get these, yeah. Do you see that they're a slightly different size? That the green ones are slightly bigger than the black cells? Okay, so this is beekeepers that are choosing sometimes to put in these big cells into the hive, and most of the time to put in these little cells. Why would they do that? Well, that's because what they notice in natural bee colonies is that the bees will build cells of different sizes. I'm going to bring this close. I want you to see how these cells are bigger cells than these over here, these small cells and larger cells. I think that kind of shows through a little better than the other plastic ones. What's happening here in a natural hive? The bees are choosing to use these cells, these larger cells, to raise drones. Drones are unfertilized eggs. Literally, the queen walks over to one of these larger cells and she knows that it's larger than these cells. And when she's here, she puts in just an egg so her internal organs work like this. You know, like as a human, our body doesn't work like this, but a honeybee's queen, her body works like this. Her body can choose to fertilize an egg, combine a sperm with an egg, boom, fertilized egg, and lay it as a worker, and that will grow up to become it'll grow up to become a female bee. Now that female could be a queen or it could be a worker. The vast majority of them are workers. There is also some genetic triggers that have to be turned on in order for it to turn into a queen. This honeycomb itself, we have all three types of cells on this. We have worker brood on this side, drone brood on this side, and on the edge over here, if I turn it like this, maybe. Do you see the little cups that are here on the edge? They're little tiny cells, little tiny cups. Now this is where like the presentation, it's gonna have pictures of these things as well. These are called queen cups. So again, the queen, if she comes across these cells this size, she will lay a fertilized egg. If she comes across these large ones, she will lay an unfertilized egg, which will develop into a male, into a drone. And if she comes across one of these cells, the queen cups, she will lay an egg in it only if all of the other cells are filled. So if all of the other cells are filled, she'll start to lay into these cups, and those will be developed into future queens. So if you're giving your bees foundation, you're kind of trying to mimic what they might be trying to do naturally. So why might the beekeeper choose to give them bigger foundation? Well, like with this, or I'm not, this means like you need to dive down the rabbit hole and go like, why would I ever want to put in a drone frame versus regular worker brood? The majority of beekeepers who keep with frames keep just small frames. But just so that you know this is out there, I'm going to tell you why people use this, because I don't. That's something you're going to have to learn about if it's something that you want to do. Okay, so I like to keep these on either foundation, frames with foundation, or in my less than traditional hives, my top bar hives, where the honeycomb hangs like this. So how does this start? Let's see, I think I want to go to the presentation and then maybe fill in with some other things. So screen share, So, okay, so we're back here, and then we're talking about cells, queens, workers, and drones. Let's see, I think, yeah, so queens, workers, and drones. So we've already kind of hit a little bit on this. And again, this is the bee biology. This is a picture of a cool little poster that I found where it has a queen, a worker, and a drone, and down here it also has a worker, a drone, and a queen, and it shows like their general life cycle. It shows about like how many days does it take to raise a queen. You can see it's quicker, 15 to 16 days to raise a queen than it is to raise a worker, which is 3 weeks, versus a drone, which is a little longer. And they end up being like a little bit bigger and everything. So it's imperative that if they needed a new queen, that they actually should be able to raise that queen faster than any other bee in the colony. They put all their effort into raising those new queens when they need them. So let's talk about that. At the bottom of the cells, what you're seeing here is I want to direct your attention. I think this shows up pretty clearly on your screen. Right here, that's an egg. That's how big the eggs are at the bottoms of the cell. So the queen will stick her abdomen way down into the cell. She'll be hanging out the top, sticking her abdomen down in the bottom, and she will lay that fertilized or unfertilized egg at the bottom of the cell. And then it stays there for about 3 days and then hatches into a little larva. And then that larva is fed by the other workers in the hive, not by the drones, but by the other female workers. So here's larvae at different stages. So larvae, you can just think of like, it's like a caterpillar larva or something like that. And actually, go back to your kindergarten years when you were taught about like, like the little egg hatches and that caterpillar comes out and he's hungry and then he eats all these crazy things. Well, these little larvae are fed by the colony until they grow and they completely like fill the whole cell. And then a worker comes over and caps over that cell with wax and helps that little larva out. So that worker takes wax flakes from her abdomen, takes her mandibles, the little crushers on the side. You can think of, if you've ever been bitten by an ant, the little pinchers there, the bees have little mandibles like that, and they form and mold the wax flakes from their own abdomen and cap that over. And then what happens is that little larva metamorphosizes inside there, just like, the little caterpillar that metamorphosizes into the butterfly. Well, it's the same type of process. And then it hatches out as a young bee, so no longer an egg, no longer a larva. It is now an adult. And as an adult, it goes through several phases of its life. This right here is a picture. What you're seeing now is a picture of worker brood and drone brood side by side. You can totally see the difference. Go ahead and think drone brood, bigger, bumblier, and less valuable to the hive than worker brood. All right, the female workers within this hive, they are way more valuable. And the bees do not make drones unless they have the resources to make the drones, or unless they've lost their queen. If they've lost their queen and they no longer have any means of making any more workers, because then what happens is the females that have underdeveloped ovaries, they can't go out and mate because they're not a queen. It doesn't work like that. They can't store sperm from the mating flights inside their organs. The workers that are left behind, they start laying eggs, and those eggs, since they're unfertilized, what do they turn into? They turn into drones. And so the last dying breath of a colony that's lost its queen is when all of the workers have laid eggs, and they've fed those eggs, and they've turned into drones. And those drones are the last dying breath of the hive. It's the last chance to get its genetics out into the world, hoping that one of those drones might mate with a queen from another hive and then pass on their genetics in some way. So here's the thing, is that the reason we have honeybees now is actually not because of that. It's because of the succession of successful queens and colonies that have split, and one queen has gone off with half of the colony, and the other colony, half the colony has stayed behind with the virgin queens that are being raised. And now they become two separate living organisms. So what you're seeing in this comb here is you're seeing the multiple purpose use of the cells. And you're seeing that as the cells are bigger over here, they are being used for different things. So here's where we're going to reframe your thoughts again. Remember, we want to reframe the way you think about honeybees. One was to think about repetition is the key to learning, and I'm a teacher here. So one is to think that honeybees are social. They work together. They are not like our bumblebees, our mason bees, our hornets, our wasps that are different types of bees. Some of them are social and live in colonies, but the majority of them don't live in colonies. They're on their own. We reframed the way that you think about the hive. The hive is a womb, all right, with the temperature swing, consistent temperature, consistent humidity, and airflow, controlling those variables. They work together to do that. Now what I want to do is I want to reframe the way that you think about the queen in the colony. The queen is not the boss in the colony. She is important, but she is not the one telling all of the bees to do. I've watched beekeepers who are veteran beekeepers who in their heads, they still see the queen as the boss of the colony. That's not what happens. The queen is the ovaries of the colony. That's what I want to reframe your brain around. Okay, so just like, like us, we have organs that we can't live without. The colony can't live without a queen. It is vital, it is important. The colony fails without a queen. However, while they have a queen and they have fertilized eggs that are being laid, they can always take one of those fertilized eggs, feed it royal jelly, and turn on genetic triggers, genetic switches that change and express the DNA within that female egg, so that it grows up and expresses the traits of a queen and becomes a new queen. So what I'm saying there is that they can replace their ovaries if they can replace a queen if the ovaries of the hive, if it's no longer functioning. Imagine so many of us as humans who get ravaged by cancer or whatever, and to lose an organ for whatever reason, disease and everything. Imagine if our own bodies could make a new organ for itself. I mean, besides the liver and everything, but what the bees can do is they can actually do that. Now, what are they really doing? Are they making an organ? No, they are making a new individual that functions and has ovaries that are fully developed and has the ability to store sperm from mating flights. Okay, so I'm totally not saying that they are making a set of ovaries when they make a queen. No, they are making a mature, a different individual within the colony that then helps them function. So we're reframing the way you're thinking about bees. You've probably, many people, and me included, when I was younger, thought that the queen was the boss and told everybody what to do. So remember, as we go to the combs of different sizes, the colony, as it realizes that it has enough resources and enough workers, there is a trigger, a decision that is collectively made. Is any one bee making that decision? No. But collectively, they start to work together to make a drone comb and drone cells, which are larger, which tells, what does that do? It tells the queen to start laying unfertilized eggs and saying, hey, we have enough workers. We can start sending some people out there to mate and spread and to reproduce with queens out there, with other virgin queens out there. So again, and the colony is also making these little cups, these queen cups, which don't become queen cells until they have a queen in it. And they are telling the queen to lay a fertilized egg in there, and then the colony feeds it royal jelly, switches genetic triggers, and grows a new queen for themselves. Now, what I have here is from one of my hives. I used to have several of these, but I passed them around in different presentations. What I want to do is show you side by side. All right, so regular size cell, imagine this right here. So I know that's kind of hard to see. Try not to drop it. Do you see how big that is? This cell, which is gigantic compared to the drone cells, compared to these other ones, this is a queen cell. And so it's bigger because the queen is physically bigger than any other bee in the colony. It's long, it's narrow, it's kind of like this peanut shape. Again, kind of bringing it in close. And this one has a hole at the end of it, because the queen in this one, the virgin queen that hatched out of this one, hatched on her own. If you ever were to come across one with a hole on the side, that would be from a virgin queen that had hatched out already. And there were 3, 4, 5, a dozen other queen cells in here. They're all getting born on the same day. The first virgin queen that comes out, what does she do? She goes and looks for her sisters, and she chews into the side of the cell, and she uses her non-barbed stinger to sting her sister to death, so that she is the only virgin queen left. So it's like Game of Thrones, man. So you're getting a chance to kind of see lots of things within the colony here. So, and part of this is so that, like, if you're in your own hive, you'd have a little background. Now, I didn't talk about how honeycomb is made, other than the foundation. But if you're on foundationless system, so this bar hangs in a hive just like this, in a top bar hive. This just has a wooden spline, a little wooden spline nailed into it. Now, why do I do that? I give them a straight line to follow, so that as they build this honeycomb, it will be parallel to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And we won't have that problem of honeycombs crossing over each other and locking all of the bars together. This makes it so that I can pull this one bar out and take a look at it and inspect it and look at the honeycomb that's on it, and it's not attached to any other bar. It makes it like the frames. So that, like, just like with these frames, I can pull out this frame, and it's not attached to any other frame. So in a natural honeycomb hive, like the top bar hive, you give them a little support, a little something to guide them, and you also make sure that your hive is level. Because here's the thing, what you'll have is you'll have a chain of bees working and building the honeycomb here, and another chain of them working on this one. And what it is bees holding on leg by leg by leg, dangling from here. And they're not the ones building the comb. They are the ones that literally just form this dangling chain. And other workers crawl along that chain, take wax off of their abdomens, and mold it into this shape. Just all of the coordination, all of the ways that they're helping each other. Never mind this geometry that's imprinted in their somehow in their subconscious there. Their instinctual, memory to make this honeycomb pattern. What happens is these panes, because this was a long bar, they join these together to create one whole honeycomb. And that's actually, you can actually see where the two panes came together here. That this one and this side was started first, and then this one was added onto it. So, yeah, again, what you're seeing here is you're seeing the importance that if I don't have any foundation, remember the wax or the plastic foundation that goes inside the frame of those other hives, then this bar needs to be plumb, needs to be level. I actually typically keep a level inside of these hives, and I make sure that the hive top is level. So, because if it's not level, then they will still build, those chains of bees will dangle like this and make honeycombs that are at all these weird angles and everything. So I actually was a mentor beekeeper I still am, for a group of people, a business that decided to take on beekeeping as part of their like HR system and help everybody kind of like have a little bit of like de-stressing and more nature in their work environment. And so I go and I inspect their hive about once a month or so. And one of their hives, for one reason or another, might not have been level or anything. And the bees built this weird cross comb that went right across the bars. We found a way of stopping it. So, but now what we have is we have 6 honeycomb bars that are locked together with these diagonal honeycombs. It's crazy geometry. I should actually get a picture for this slideshow. But again, that's probably because the bees are building along a chain, a dangling chain of bees. They're building the honeycomb and following, however that chain is being dangled. And the hive, when they set it up, wasn't quite perfectly level from side to side and from front to back. Okay, so let's get back into the presentation. Screen share. Okay, so again, we're seeing that the cells are used for many purposes. Fun. Can you spot the queen? Okay, so ha-da-da. Can you spot the queen? Yeah. If you're looking at this one right here, that's dead center in the photograph, then yeah, you found the queen. I mean, there's the hint. A lot of these, the queen's right in the center. So what you'll notice with the queen is, again, she's way bigger and longer than this drone that's here. That's a drone. This is a drone. Looks like this is a worker here and another worker here. But the drones have, look at that black right there. That's its eyes. It's like whole front of its head is eyes. Why is a drone, like right here, you can get a good sense of that. Drone's eyes right there. Look at the queen's eyes, not as big. Why are the drone's eyes gigantic? It's because its one job is to fly out of the hive and look and find a queen that's flying on her mating flight, which we'll talk about in a bit. Okay, can you spot the queen there? It's a little harder, right? Right. If you're looking right here, that's the queen. There we go. A little longer, that shape. You're going to see the same shape. You spot the queen there. Okay, this one right here is the queen. What I tend to notice with the queen is that her wings are off to the side, and there's this like the circular spot on her back that's very pronounced compared to all the other bees. I noticed that, plus of course the big long abdomen. And then the queen here is blocked a little bit. The queen is there. Can you spot the queen here? We only got a few more of these. Okay, it's this body right here. That's the queen. And here we've got a queen right here. Okay. So, and what do we have in this picture? We have some examples of queen cells. Now, these are not queen cups. A cup is just a cell that doesn't have anything laid in it yet. But now this has become a full, so this is the whole honeycomb has been pulled up and it's on its side. And these would be dangling straight down. This queen cell would be pointing down to the center of the earth, and so would this one and this one. So you see those little cells like the ones that I had held up for you. Again, multiple cells being raised. This is an example of like what my hives looked like when I was raising queens. Up here, I would have part of the colony, and I would force them and split them apart and raise queens underneath, and that's what I was doing there. And this is what I meant by the side of a cell being chewed open, and the queen I had caught her in the act. I pulled this out, and what I was doing was I was harvesting queen cells to make new colonies. And by the time I had gotten to this one right here, one of the virgin queens was chewing on the side of this cell, and her abdomen was in there, stinging that little, stinging her sister to death. Okay, so we've heard quite a bit. We are going to now transition into swarms, which is the real reproduction in the hive. Not any one individual, but the swarms where they literally split is where we find reproduction. So organized, let's see, books. So, okay. I can't remember if these are in the presentation or not. So a lot of these books, they are linked in the resources that I'm going to pass on to you, that go along with this presentation. So it's not like you have to get a pen or a pencil and write these down right now, but we're going to talk about swarms. And this book, Swarm Essentials, talks about how you can catch swarms and kind of get free bees. Now I say free because it takes time and it might take some equipment to catch them, but then you didn't pay for them themselves. So this is an adventure. This is something that I've done. And what I want you to see is, do you see that clump of bees that is right there on that branch? That's what we're talking about. There's going to be more pictures in the presentation. So a swarm looks like that. And this is what we're going to start talking about. Increasing. This book is called Increase Essentials. And it really is this book that's jam-packed with how can you create little colonies that from one colony, and then use that to increase the number of beehives that you have, the bee colonies that you have. So, and that comes down to the fact that the bees will raise more than one queen when they need to, and you harvest those queens, you split the resources up, and you provide, and you feed them, and you divide them up into little tiny homes, and you can create more bees. What I will say is that people who take this class, this is a good cheap way of deciding if beekeeping is for you. What I'll say is that there's going to be plenty of people who get into beekeeping and they try it out and they find out, no, this is not for me. There'll be some people who take this class and they're like, whoa, no, this is not for me. And that's okay. Like you found out basically for free rather than investing hundreds or thousands of dollars in equipment and stuff, then finding out that it's not okay. But here's what I'll say. People who become really good at beekeeping are people who learn how to catch swarms, but more importantly, how to make bees from your survivors, from the surviving stock that you have. When we hear about bees are dying here and there and everywhere and stuff, well, why do we still have them around? We have them because the people who are good at keeping this livestock and reproducing from them have learned how to make more colonies. So we are also gonna come back and talk about this book, Honeybee Democracy, by Thomas Seeley. We've hit a little bit on this. He really helped. So Thomas Seeley is a New Englander. Worked at I think he still works at Cornell University, and his work is amazing. He went out to it's like part of his in this book and the other books that he's written. He went to different areas around Cornell University in the woods out there, and he would literally find these honeybee trees where bees were living, feral bees. They had once lived in a hive, they swarmed, and now they live in a tree. So they become feral, just like a feral dog or a cat, so it's a livestock that went feral and is now living on its own in a tree. He would climb up on a ladder, stomp up the entrance with it, put in a tube and gas the whole colony to death, then take a chainsaw, cut the tree down. And what he did was he was the first person who really looked at how many workers were there in a hive, how many drones were in a hive, the queen and everything, and counted the cells, counted how many eggs there were, how many larvae were there, and at what stage were they at. He got into that nitty gritty of biology, and also how big was the hollow, the tree hollow, the volume of it, how big was the entrance. That really helps us kind of understand when bees are looking for a new home, or if we're trying to create a new home for bees, we should mimic what's in the wild and give them hives that have the similar volume as what they are looking for in the wild. He also helped decode. Now, way back during World War II, they decoded the waggle dance, which we'll see, the waggle dance, but he helped decode other ways in which bees democratically make decisions within the colony, and learn from it. All right, going back to screen share. Bam, bam, boom. All right, swarms. Swarms are real reproduction. So swarm, this is not a swarm. What you're seeing here is not a swarm of bees. Actually, my bees, this is what they've been looking like for the past few weeks. This is called a beard. What a creative name, okay? So it's called a beard of bees. They do this on hot, humid days. Why do they do this on hot, humid days? They get all the bodies, the extra bodies out of the hive because it's too darn hot and too darn humid. Remember, the colony, the hive, is a womb. And if they have all those bodies in the hive, and it's a 90-degree day outside, or even an 80-degree day outside, and it's humid, and they have all those bees inside, the temperature inside the hive will get up into the 100s, and it'll start to kill the eggs and the larvae that are in there. So they get the bodies out, and they actually end up, you see the dangling chains here on your screen. So that is what it looks like. They're hanging outside the hive. So this is not bees swarming. A swarm of bees looks like this, where they have split from the colony. They are not outside the hive. They are just somewhere else, maybe a few hundred feet, few thousand feet from the hive. Typically, when a swarm like this is spotted in like a, you know, a grocery store parking lot or something like that, people might like freak out. But so here's the thing. They are docile when they are in this state. They are not defensive because they are like naked. They don't have their home. If you were to go and like knock on a beehive itself, well, they'd come out and they'd defend it. But with this, you can actually put your hand up against it and they're not going to sting you. They'll move in through your hand and everything. You'll feel the warmth of that globe of bees. What are they doing there? They, like I've already said before, is that like when they're raising a virgin queen, the old queen leaves with about half of the colony, knowing that there's a virgin queen behind that will become the new ovaries of the colony. And that the old queen, who's still viable, leaves with about half of the colony, and they ball up around her and they start looking for a new home. And that's where like this came in. And, you know, and the Swarm Essentials book came in. If you wanted to look at how to catch swarms and the details of that, I've caught swarms. My rate is about, for every 10 boxes I put out, I catch about 1 colony for every 10. So if I put out 40 boxes, I might catch 4 colonies. Now that's a lot of boxes. Okay, so there are people, you know, down south where beekeeping is a little easier to keep bees and the temperatures are different. And when I say down south, I mean southern United States, where their success rate with putting out 10 boxes as bait hives to catch these swarms, what you're seeing, these swarms. And this is what a bait hive would look like. So right here, you see a swarm that is coming to a bait hive. And this is another one strapped to a tree. Their success rate in the lower states can be up into 80%, meaning you put out 10 boxes and 8 out of the 10 you could catch bees in. That's awesome. I'll be honest, up here I found it harder to do. That doesn't mean that somebody wouldn't have better success rate than me. Okay, so what are they putting inside that box? They are putting in lemongrass oil of some kind. I used to put it in on a paper towel, soak the lemongrass in a Ziploc bag, and I had it open just a crack, and I put it inside the box. The way that this, you know, this is where if we had a class, I'd be passing this around. It's delightful. It smells lemongrass. This mimics, it's nearly chemically identical to the national pheromone that they use, that when they found a new home, they fan this pheromone out from the back. The workers that have found that new home fan that pheromone out into the wind, and then that swarm comes in and comes to the entrance of that new home. So you're baiting it with this. You typically are also baiting it with either an old baiting it with an old frame of comb, or if you're in top bars, a comb like that, or even a small, I know I'm in the small version, that's a big version of this frame, but even a small chunk of honeycomb. This smells like home to the bees. It smells like the inside of a hive and makes them think, oh, bees used to live here. We should go there. So swarms can be a way of, what's that picture? So swarms can be a way, it is the way that bees in nature reproduce. Now, they can swarm several times. Remember, if they're raising several virgin queens, the first queen will leave with a significant amount of the bees. Now, if there's still a critical mass of bees behind that could split, when the next virgin leaves, hatches out, she might leave with, again, about half of the bees again or so from the hive, and there'll be a secondary swarm. These are called these cast swarms afterwards. They may swarm several times, and sometimes, as a beekeeper, they may swarm several times to the point where the bees that are left behind, there may be a virgin queen left behind, there may be some workers, but they may be such a low population that they don't survive anymore. So as a beekeeper, you tend to try to stop your bees from swarming and get ahead of it, okay? If they have swarmed, you try to capture that swarm and start a new colony from it, not to put them back in the old one, because there's a reason why they swarmed. What's the reason why they swarm? Typically, so I'll switch to my large view here. Okay, so when would bees swarm? Typically it is after the first year that they have survived. So a colony might have started in a tree trunk, in a beehive or whatever in the spring, and they build up and they go into the winter with their stores and they survive the winter. Now, when they come out of winter, they are starting to find pollen and nectar everywhere in spring, and they're bringing it into the colony and storing it, packing away, and raising young, raising new bees. Eventually, there's no more honeycomb in there that's empty. Every cell is filled with pollen, with nectar, or with baby bees. And the queen lays in a queen cup, and in several queen cups, and it triggers the instinct to swarm and to split. So here's the thing, is that it is instinctual for them to do this. If we don't want them to swarm, we're fighting against their instinct. So you could let them swarm, okay? That is naturally what they want to do, to reproduce, to put out, to split and to create new colonies. However, as a beekeeper, what you could do is you could get ahead of that. And that's where we'll start to learn about like increase essentials, not in this class, but that's like further learning, future learning for you. If you want to like have a sustainable operation, you are going to learn how to make new splits, a split, and make a nucleus colony, which we'll get into, because that is how you get bees for your hive. So I'm looking at the clock. I know we're already like an hour in, so let's get to the presentation. We need to get to some of the equipment as well. But what you're learning here is, remember I said the first hour, 45 minutes or so is just bee biology. We're starting to transition into, how do I get bees for my hive? So as we're looking at these slides here, okay, so you could catch swarms. That could be one way of getting bees. I'm not gonna dive too deeply into this, but however, these bees are color-coded and number-coded. Dude, that guy, Thomas Seeley, he had his grad students and they were like gluing on these little dots and everything so that every bee could be counted and numbered. And this is how he decoded how bees flew out. That's the waggle dance. You can totally look at that. How bees flew out from the colony and found new homes and then flew back. He was able to track with his grad students and walkie-talkies in an island off the coast of Maine, where there was only a lobsterman who lived there, who didn't really care for their beekeeping operation on the island and everything. And he took over the island with bees, forced them to swarm and find new homes. And through that craziness that you saw, that all that numbering and everything, was able to decode how the bees were finding their new homes. Now, what they would do is they would fly out, find a new home, and then fly back to that cluster, land on that cluster of the swarmed bees, and do a waggle dance. Now, what the waggle dance is basically the bee comes in and says, hey, it does the waggle dance for so long. The longer it does the dance, dancing around and then around in these little loops and everything, that's how far the bees have to fly. And then the angle at which they're doing the dance on the honeycomb, doing the dance like this, or doing the dance like this, that is, yeah, I didn't think I'd be using the wall like that. That is the angle at which they fly out, the angle that the sun is in relationship to where the food is, or where the food is in relationship to the sun. So literally, if they have a food source that's east, and they're going to that food source all day long, from morning to evening, when bees are coming back and doing the waggle dance to say that the food is here in the morning, that's a different dance than in the evening when the sun is in a different location. Their dance changes throughout the day. But what Thomas Seeley found was that they were using that same waggle dance to find new homes, new tree cavities, tree hollows, and to come back and to convince more and more bees. So I'm not going to go over this, but this is a diagram about how like the bees were split in their decision making as to like where they were going to go. And then on June 13th, June 14th, and on the 15th, the bees decided, hey, we're going to take off. And the bees decided, so many bees were convinced by different waggle dances to go to this new home. So he found that the bees communicated and used a democratic way of finding a new home. This is, again, it's just a piece of comb that can be used in a bait hive. So how to get bees for your hive. So we talked about swarms, okay? Now we're going to talk about the other ways that you could get bees for your beehives. And that's going to be me kind of getting a few little props and everything. So one of those ways is what's called as a 3-pound package. Yeah, it's like doing this with the camera and everything. It's like, I got one here, thinking about it. This is less valuable on camera than it is if we were in person. Okay, a 3-pound package. So just look at the pictures. It is a package screened in, and there is about 3 pounds of bees in there. How do they make this? Well, this is one that came in the mail. It's all screened. It's like double screened in. I bought one of these in the mail one time. It cost about $40 or $50 extra if you want to have one mailed to you versus picking one up from a local beekeeper. Sometimes you'll see the packages look packaged like this in these like plastic carts. What you'll see is that they all have a jar of syrup inside, and that's so that the bees don't starve in their transportation. And so beekeepers up here in the north, they're not making packages typically. The beekeepers here, so this is a Connecticut class, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. They are your apiaries up here that are buying packages and maybe selling them to you. They are driving down south to Georgia, to Tennessee, and they're driving down with like a van or a box truck or a trailer that's an enclosed trailer, and they're driving down and getting dozens, hundreds, whatever of these. And they're paying, probably $60, $70, $80, $90 for them. And then they bring them up here and they tend to sell them for about $120, $130, $140, depends on where you're getting them. So there's your price point right there. How much are you going to pay for bees if you get a package? It's going to be probably about $125 to $140, somewhere in that range, okay? Give or take tax and credit card fees and all that stuff. This is one way, and this is one of the easiest ways for you to get bees, okay? Now, there are pros and cons to getting bees in a package. Let's see if I got, okay, so something like this is, I guess, here, wow, me. Okay, so a 3-pound package, when you pop off the top, this is stapled on, and remember, you got all the bees in there. You've got a jar of syrup that's there, and so jar of syrup. Now, there'd be tons of bees flying out from this, but stapled up in here is going to be what's a queen cage, and this is part of the how it's made and everything like that. You can see with this queen cage, this was one where I just pulled this off to release the queen. Typically, it has a bit of candy at one end and a cork in another end, and the queen will be inside that cage with several worker bees. Okay, the queen will be large, the workers will be smaller. The workers literally feed the queen. And that's what happens in the hive. I didn't say that earlier. The queen is just so busy laying like 1,000 eggs a day, 1,000 eggs a day, 1,000 eggs a day in the height of the season. So that means that like every day, like 1,000 babies are being born in the height of the season. So if you crush a bee while you're inspecting, it's no big deal. For that bee, it was a big deal. But for the colony, losing a couple bees is no big deal. The queen herself, she is so busy laying eggs that she doesn't have the ability to feed herself. So she's in here with workers and with a little bit of fondant or candy that they feed her in transport. Now, why is she in a cage? She is in a cage for her own good because the queen is not related to any of the bees in here. She's related to the bees that are in here because she was made in a mating yard. She might have been artificially inseminated. That's a whole other thing you can look up and everything. But yeah, humans artificially inseminating these queen bees. She might have been naturally mated, gone out on a mating flight, mated with 12 to 24 drones, and then came back, and then they harvested the queen, all right, and then put her in here with some of the workers from her little mini colony, her mating colony. However, she is not related to any of the bees that were in here. The way that they make this is, we've got our little box that's down here, is that they take a funnel and they take frames, these props over here, they take frames and shake bees off into the funnel from, so they're out in a yard with hundreds or thousands of beehives and they're ripping the roofs off, they got smoke everywhere, they got their bee suits on, and they're shaking bees into this package. And then taking a queen from and packaging that in, and then putting the jar of syrup in, and then stapling this on the top, and then setting this off to the side on the truck to be sold. So when are they doing this? Down south, they're doing this in like March. Because if you think about for us, when do our dandelions pop up? They pop up in like late April, early May or so. But down south, spring starts sooner. And those beehives start filling up and becoming swarmy. They start to, you know, they might swarm and stuff like that way sooner than our bees up here. So if you're getting a package of bees, you're probably going to be getting them at a time of year when there aren't even flowers up here in Connecticut. And that means that you're gonna have to feed your bees syrup so that they don't starve, because they'll literally starve to death. So you might find there are a few different kinds of feeders. This type of feeder is called a Boardman feeder. It goes inside the entrance slot on a hive, again, filled with a jar, and it's got like little holes punched in the bottom. In my top bar hives and some of the other hives, I literally just use a mason jar where the lid has some holes punched in it, little tiny holes, about the tiniest hole that you can make with a nail. And that jar just sits on the bottom of the hive with a couple of pieces of wood underneath, just big enough for the bees to get up underneath and go up in to drink and then go back into the hive. And then you will see, when I came here, they're like, oh my God, you got a lot of props. Yeah, I do. You'll see these. This is a frame feeder. This, you pour the syrup into this frame, drop it into a hive, and then it would have one less frame inside of it. And the bees crawl in here, they drink the syrup, and they go out. So a lot of people who use framed hives, they use these feeders. Okay, so this is like a very common thing to have a frame feeder. It probably won't come with your kit if you bought a kit, but this is like it's pretty much a must-have. Because if you're getting bees, there are going to be times when where you have to feed them syrup. Because again, they're livestock, and we are manipulating them beyond what they're naturally used to. So if we're bringing bees up here from the south during a time of year where there are no flowers, we're going to have to feed them. Okay. No. So okay. I got sticky again. Okay, so let's go. Boom. All right, so let's do a little screen sharing. Boom, boom, boom. We got so we've got the queen. So again, the queen, she is in there because she's not related to any of the other bees in the package. And if you take a bee, any bee, queen bee, worker bee, drone bee, from one colony, put them into another colony, they don't smell like that colony's queen. That colony's queen lets out a pheromone that's unique to her. This queen in this little cage lets out a pheromone that's unique to her. She has her own odor, her own pheromone. And when they smell her, they want to kill her. They want to rip her out and take her out. So she's in that cage for her own protection. So that's what a package is going to have that. And this is what like installing a package could look like. We're not going to get into that. You literally like shake the bees out into the hive, into the colony. This is a top bar hive. Typically, all of these bars that are here would be all the way across the hive. They would be, so we are taking a couple bars out to shake the bees into the hive and also put the queen in carefully. So here's the thing. This little class doesn't talk about how do you install bees. That's future learning, okay? So you're gonna have to learn about how to install the bees that you want. Oh, no, so let's see what else we got. So now another way, the third and final way of getting bees for your colony is to purchase a nucleus colony. So this is what a nucleus colony could look like. There are lots of different ways that they look. So over here, where I've been storing my frames for this class is in an old nucleus colony, okay? There's a little entrance that's down on one side, and there'd be like a little spot for a jar feeder up at the top. Now, what is it? It is what you see there. Count the frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How do they make that? They put in 2 empty frames that have just foundation on them. Okay. So it's a frame that has just that plastic or wax foundation on them. Why? So that the colony has room to expand and grow in that little volume, in that little space. Okay. And then what they do is this happens. These are called spring nukes or like early summer nukes, where the colony naturally wants to expand and needs room to expand. And then you're putting in there one frame that's got honey on it, okay? Nearly all honey and maybe some pollen in it. And that's the food source for that little colony. And then 2 frames of worker brood, baby bees that are ready, just about ready to hatch. Put those in, boom. Now, with that, there's going to be some other things. You could have a naturally mated queen that's put in there. You could have a queen cell that's put in there. There's lots of different ways that these are made, okay? But what happens is that group there, eventually there's going to be a queen that's in there that becomes mated and everything, is likely from here in Connecticut, not from anywhere else. These are locally made and locally sold and used to start new colonies. So you've got a locally adapted queen and group of bees, okay? So you're gonna tend to pay a little more for this. You're gonna tend to pay up around that $180 to $200 range. I've paid as much as $250 for, you know, a particular breed or a treatment-free stock or whatever. But again, from local beekeepers, okay? So these are gonna cost more, but here's the thing. You are getting bees that have frames, that have brood, that have a proven queen that is laying. It's not a naked colony like what you saw earlier. Those packages, those are pretty much naked bees, and they have to start from scratch. These bees, you are paying in a nucleus colony, which is called a nuke. Some people call them a nook, but because it's a nucleus colony, we should call it a nuke. Okay. So this nucleus colony, here's a field of nucleus colonies. I think this was from Heritage Apiary when I was out there one time getting bees from them. He has this electric fence up to keep the bears out. And you can see each of these nucleus colonies set up in different directions, entrances facing different directions. So as the bees leave, they know which one to come back to. And they each have a jar feeder on the top to help prop them up. Because again, this is a small colony, it's just getting going. So you are feeding them to help stimulate their growth. Okay, now, so again, this is what it could look like. And the crazy picture like this, something like this where you've got like lots and lots and lots of nukes. These are all in like little wooden boxes and everything. All of these are, so they're called nukes or splits. There's lots of terms used for this. So again, this is what it could look like in a big mating yard like this. Okay, so what you're seeing here is you are seeing a top bar hive with a nucleus underneath it. So this is a 5-frame nuke, and the bees here, this was taken in the summer, the bees are bearding. What you're seeing here is an adapter that's made for the top bar hive. I happen to be somebody, since I'm a passionate top bar hive beekeeper and moiré beekeeper, I'm a woodworker. I don't sell bees or anything like that, and I teach these classes, but I love working in my wood shop. I've actually like invented this device. And there are people from like, you know, around the country who have top bar hives, but don't want to put a package of bees in. And they can't, no matter how hard they try, they can't fit these rectangular frames into a trapezoidal, shaped colony. So what this does is you put the frames down below, and it allows the bees to build up into the colony, into the hive that has a different volume, a different geometric shape to it. And then what happens is you pretty much leave this on for the life of the colony, and you're transitioning them from a Langstroth hive, framed hive, to a top bar hive. What you'll see in the next picture is, again, this is another like invention of mine where you have this is a moiré hive. Remember the combs that were like wavy and everything that we saw earlier? This is a different type of hive. The moiré hive is one where, again, it is more of a square system inside the box, and these rectangular frames don't fit. So this is a box that sits on top. The bees build down into the new hive, and then eventually, after a year or so, you cycle off the old box, fully converting it into a moiré hive. So that is how some people are taking a Langstroth 5-frame nuke and converting it into a less than traditional hive. Now, if you have a Langstroth hive, which I'll show you in a bit, you're literally just taking empty frames out and putting those 5 frames in, and bam, your bees are installed. You just have to be careful not to crush them. It's very, very simple. So we're gonna get into the types of hives. Okay, so let's see. I guess as we're looking at that right now, we've got, so we're at the, like this like last half hour of this like nearly 2-hour talk. All right, so but we'll go through. There really are a lot of different types of hives out there. The first one I want you to notice there that I'm saying is the flow hive. It's not for the beginner, and the vast majority of beekeepers who are real beekeepers, they are sick and tired of their friends sharing them flow hive links on Facebook or whatever they're on. As a beekeeper, they know that a flow hive prioritizes honey harvest over bee health, the bee colony and everything, and that it's a gimmick. And so right off the bat, I'm not going to tell you not to get a flow hive, but I'm going to say it should not be your first hive. A flow hive is a modified Langstroth hive. And if you, down the road you do like the idea of the flow hive, you first should have 1 or 2 seasons of a Langstroth hive under your belt, you know, and knowing how to do that. Now, so we've got the Langstroth, which you're going to hear me. That's the traditional framed hives, the American traditional hive. Now, the people in the UK, like, you know, in the United Kingdom, they've got their own traditional framed hive, the Dadant hive. All right, and the dimensions are different. So here across the pond, we've got our own standard system. So here in America, the big standard is the Langstroth hive. Okay, all right. So like it or not, they're easily made and cheaply made in China and shipped via Amazon and the big beekeeping companies and stuff like that. You can buy them locally. I used to make them, but it would cost more to have me make one than to just buy one. And it would take longer time for me to make it than to just buy one and assemble it. So I don't make them anymore just because I don't like making them. They're very fiddly. When I want to use a Langstroth, I buy a kit and I assemble it. Okay, so we're also going to talk about a horizontal top bar hive. That is the hive that makes these combs. Now, why are they not rectangular? Again, it's because the hive is angled. Because if the hive were straight down, I know I'm showing you this on the small screen. If the comb was straight down, a rectangular hive, the bees would fill that space, but the comb would become unstable and wobbly. And what they would do is attach that to the wall of the hive. What you see here is that because the hive body is angled inward, the comb stays stable and they do not attach it to the walls of the hive. The top bar hive was originally created and invented, I think, by the Peace Corps. I could be wrong, but it's something like that, if not the Peace Corps, to bring to rural areas in Africa so that they could, you know, raise bees in a very efficient way using cheap lumber, not with frames, but just by making strips of wood and a regular box hive. Now, the Ugandan top bar hive had straight walls, and the bees would attach the comb to the walls, making it very hard for the beekeeper to take anything in and out of the hive. The Kenyan style top bar hive had the angled walls. And now when you look up a top bar hive, you're typically going to find an angled Kenyan style top bar hive. Although nobody calls them a Kenyan top bar hive, they just call it a top bar hive, blah, 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 blah. But if you're looking up free plans and stuff like that, you want one with angled walls. I have a set of plans that I sell and stuff like that, and it goes with my hives and my dimensions. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we're going to talk about the horizontal hive and then the vertical hive that's the Warre, not the vertical Langstroth. Okay, so, and there's hybrid hives. So if you were to buy a Langstroth hive, it's like I have one right here, my computer's sitting on it. I'm not sure if I'm going to like go and show you the pieces of it. What you're seeing here is straight off of Amazon's site like a little while ago. These are some kits. Look at those price points, 130 for either one. However, this is not a complete hive kit. If you look at this, this has a bottom board, which the boxes sit on top. It has one hive body with frames inside, 10 frames inside, and it has probably an inner cover and then this outer cover on top of it. Now, so here's the thing, your bees for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, will live in that cavity, but they will fill it up. And you want your bees to live for multiple generations, don't you? So here's the thing, is that you're going to need to add more boxes to that. You're going to have the stack be probably 2 of these boxes high, and then at least 2 of those boxes high, and then adding other boxes on top to harvest honey. So if you look at this one here, you're like, oh, 2 boxes. Again, it's not going to be enough. Okay, so my point with that is that those price points are so enticing, but they are not complete hives. This one, I know you can still see these here, but this one right here, this is a complete hive, and this is probably what you should expect to pay for a good, sturdily built, hive that's ready to go, up around that $500 range or so. Okay, it's got a bottom board, an entrance reducer. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 bodies. Now this one, I think all of the hive bodies are medium depth. If we get these out again. Okay. Oh, I gotta change screens. I got wax all over my computer, man. Choices that we make. Okay, I just want you to see the depth. Okay, there are deeps, deep frames, medium frames, and shallow frames or small frames. Nobody really uses the smalls or the shallows around here. They use mediums and they use deeps. Deeps are used, well, because it's one continuous big comb, they are used in the lower boxes where the brood is being raised. And typically these mediums are added on, a whole box of mediums is added on top to collect honey. Okay. However, there are some systems, the one that I was just showing you off Amazon, where all the boxes are one size and they're all mediums. And that's so that you don't have 2 different frame size. You would want to go all deeps or all mediums, and people who usually make that change, that decision, they go all mediums. But most kits, what you'll find is you'll find 2 boxes that have deep frames and 2 boxes that have medium frames, for a total of 4 boxes. 40 frames in all, because each box has 10 frames. Now, got stuff on my computer. All right, let's go back. Man, I've been talking. This is what I meant by it's like a flow state of mind. I just keep going. Bam. Okay, so what do we got? So you'll find hive kits like this. Now you look at this one, price tag $600 plus or minus shipping or whatever. What you'll see that you have with this, I would not recommend you to get a kit like this, or to get a kit like this for your partner or whatever for the holidays. A kit like this, it's got the hive, and then it's got the accessories. The accessories that come with these kits tend to be cheaply made. They tend to be cheaply made. You should buy the accessories separately. Even an inexpensive accessory, like a smoker. This smoker right here, I can tell you, is a piece of junk. It'll work for a little bit, but not for season after season after season. And for something that's going to have fire in it, you want it to work for several seasons. This veil, I can tell you, is junk. These gloves, I don't know. They might be fine. The tools are probably fine. But these bigger items, the veil and the smoker and stuff like that, those you're going to want to buy separately. So I advise against buying a kit, but to buy the individual parts that you want individually. Okay. Okay. So jumping into this is where it's like I don't have like you out at my yard. Remember, the power is out and stuff like that. I would normally bring you on a tour of some of the different hives out there and what they look like. But this is a top bar hive. A top bar hive has these little top bars, and they are all put in, and you get those trapezoidal shaped combs. It also has a roof. When you open that roof up, the side that we're standing on, that the picture is on right here on this side, that's the beekeeper side. The entrances are on the opposite side. And so the bee's flight path is on the opposite side. The nice thing about a top bar hive is that it's at this like working height, this like waist level height. And you're only picking up one comb at a time and looking at it. And that comb might be like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pounds at most, not very heavy. However, when we're working with these box style hives, one of these boxes, it could be 50 to 100 pounds if it's like jam-packed with honey and with bees. It'd be heavy lifting when you do need to get in there and inspect. The pro of these, so here's the thing. I think in the list of resources I'm going to give you, I'm looking around, see if I have a copy. Yep, there we go. I'm going to give you a list of pros and cons about different hive types. This is a 2-page handout. The link is going to be there, but I'm not going to read through them. This is for like future stuff. You're like ready to get a hive. One of the first things you have to decide is what type of hive are you going to get? And then you're going to decide like, where are you going to get your bees? And then you're going to get your accessories. The first 2 things you're going to line up are what type of hive do I want? And that's why we talk about it. So with a Langstroth hive, it typically has 10 frames in it. You can find boxes that have 8 frames, but that's going to be a first choice that you make. If you're going with the framed hives, do you want to have 10 frames in it and the boxes be heavier, but like a bigger volume? Or do you want to have a smaller volume and have 8 frames in each hive so that it's a little lighter, a little easier on the back? Altogether, you're going to make a choice that's going to determine that the next time you buy another hive, it will be the same type of hive and the same type of hive and the same type of hive. So make your choices with intent and make them be smart choices up front that are going to work for you. If you know that you have back problems, you're going to get an 8-frame medium depth hive where all the boxes are shorter and have only 8 frames and they'll be easier to lift. Or you're going to go with a top bar hive where you don't have to do any heavy lifting at all. I've had people who were in wheelchairs who bought top bar hives from me. So I say people, but I had one customer who was in a wheelchair and they had their top bar hive just down on cinder blocks. So it was just at the level of their wheelchair and they could open it up and they could inspect it and they had their suit on in their, in their chair and everything, but it made it so that they didn't have to do any heavy lifting. So as we get into this, there are going to be pros and cons for all of these. The pros for the box style hives is that they are uniform. Nearly everybody who's kept bees has kept bees in those types of hives. And if you need a mentor, which you should get your first year, they are going to know that type of hive system. However, with the top bar hives, again, I love the fact that they're making natural comb, and that they're building it within that space. And there's just like this ease of management with a top bar hive. It has its own challenges. You have to keep it level. Side to side is more important than front to back. But so this long distance, keeping that level is very important. Otherwise, they'll build comb that crosses over those bars and locks those bars together. Okay, so if you were to build one on your own, go ahead. I built mine on my own. Go with a good set of plans. I'm not saying buy my plans, but like a lot of the free plans that are out there, they're not good plans. Find a good set of plans for that top bar hive. Okay, so this is what another type of Langstroth hive could look like. It has a ventilated roof. So inside of this, let's see, my face is in the way. This is a Warre hive, and this has a ventilated roof. These 2 hives, this one has frames in it, and this one does not. This one is the one where you get all the funky comb because it's just weird little bars inside, but it lets the bees do what they want to do. All right, it's going to be harder to inspect, but the boxes are smaller than this framed hive over here. I think that's altogether. This is one of those times where it's like because of the power outage and stuff like that. There's going to be a little more homework that you've got to do looking into hives. All right, but I am pointing you in the right direction of like you're going to have a pros and cons list that goes along with this. Also, looking at this, this is a Warre hive, and this is a Warre hive with that nucleus attachment added onto it, and it also has a ventilated roof. What's underneath this ventilated roof is a box with burlap underneath it, and you fill it with shavings. And what happens is as warm moisture rises in the winter, that moisture collects in the shavings and gets vented out the top. It gets wicked away out at the top, making it significantly less likely that you'd ever have any moisture problems with your hive. Again, this is a primer class. You will want to learn about keeping bees in the winter. With whatever hive type you choose, the way you keep bees in the winter and overwinter your hives is going to be different depending on any one of these three hive types that we look at. This is a good example. So this is a framed hive, a Langstroth hive, but it has a quilt box, those wood shavings on top of the stack, okay? And it has that ventilated roof. So we're at the point here where we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, just kind of wrapping things up and talking about some basic equipment. No matter what hive type you get, you're going to need just a handful of things. Don't get caught up on gimmicks. Don't go out and buy a honey extractor. You don't need it your first year of beekeeping, because you're going to need to let your bees have that honey to survive the winter. I see way too many beekeepers harvest honey from their bees their first year, and then their bees die that winter. How do you know that they didn't die of starvation, or they didn't die of or that you didn't weaken them and stress them out by taking away their honey? The point being is that your first year is going to be a year of observation. Get 2 colonies. Here, I'm going to switch to just me here. Get 2 colonies, get 2 hives set up. Why 2? Because at least 2, you know. Now that's money. I know that's money right there. I'm telling you to basically drop $1,000 on this right at the get-go. Join in with another person. Build your own equipment. You know, fund this with another person who's interested in. Get a group together who's interested in doing this. Okay, everybody gets their own, you know, their own veil and suit and everything, but you all share the set of hives. You go out there and you make it a little community thing. Yeah, you're wearing a mask underneath the veil and everything, and you're keeping your social distance, but you're joining your resources together. So here's what, as a strategy, as a first-year beekeeper, I highly encourage you to join a beekeeping club and take the classes that they offer, okay? They're gonna cost more. They're gonna be in the winter. Start looking for a hive type that you're gonna want, and you're going to be wanting to try and suit up for 2 hives. Okay, 2 of the same type of hive, 2 Langstroths, 2 top floors, 2 morays, typically 2 Langstroth hives. And in January or February, make sure that you have paid your deposits for your bees, because they sell out quick and they sell in those winter months. So when you're on Christmas vacation or whatever, New Year's holiday or whatever, you're Googling, you're setting a reminder in your phone right now to like look for bees, whether it's a nucleus colony or packages, to try and get your deposits in. Now, can you find bees like in June? Yeah, you can, but you're gonna have to really search for it, and they may not be what you want. Okay, so line up your equipment early. Those make great Christmas presents, timing-wise, because people can get familiar with them, and bam, you've also like put a big chunk, you've given a big Christmas present at a good time or whatever. So nice holiday present. And team up with people. Team up with other like-minded people and pool your resources together. Do you have to own all of the hives? No. Like maybe somebody buys all of the, buys the hives. Somebody buys the bees. Or maybe you pool all your money together and you budget it out and say, this is what we need from everybody. Everybody needs to kick in $400 for this. And you take your 4 friends and their $300 or $400, and bam, you've got a huge chunk of money to really create an apiary in one of those people's yards. So then you're also looking at a location for this. Do you need to keep bees in your own backyard? No, there are plenty of farms and stuff out there who would love to have your bees there. They might even pay you like a service to keep bees on their property as a pollination service. Or they'd let you keep them there for free and stuff like that, just use of the land and everything. Maybe as you get into this, you can advertise for pollination services. But so as you're getting into it, words of advice would be join in with people, get more than 1 colony, because if one colony starts to fail, you have another colony next to it that's doing better than another one. I just went out last week and I inspected one of my mentees' hives, and they had the 2 hives set up. And one hive, they were like, yeah, this hive, that hive was bearding and had a lot of bees outside, and this hive doesn't really have any. And I looked at it, I said, yeah, I think something's going on the inside that's different. We went inside, we looked in the hive, and you know what we found? We found that the hive that had a lower population because they had requeened themselves. they had some way, reason or another, maybe they accidentally inspected and killed or crushed the queen, or the colony itself decided, hey, off with her head, we need a new queen. They raised a new queen. Well, what did that do? It, you know, for about 3 or 4 weeks worth of time, it slowed down their reproduction of new bees. And so that was the reason. Now, how do we even know to look for that? We knew to look for that because we had 2 colonies side by side. And we knew right off the bat that one was not doing as well as the other. But now that we knew and we found the new queen, we know that everything's okay. You know, all the other things that we looked at in the colony were fine for that colony. We just knew that. I told them, I was like, hey, you know what you should do is you should start feeding them some syrup, maybe a little pollen patty, just to, like, you know, help stimulate their growth, since they are playing a little bit of catch-up mode right now. It helped us determine what to do in this, like, midsummer time. So now let's get into equipment. What are you going to need? We said that you're going to need to source your bees and your hives, and you're also going to need some sort of feeding system for that. So if it's the frame feeders or jar feeders, you're going to need a smoker. All right, and so like I've got links in like my little document that go over a good size smoker and everything. And you're gonna watch YouTube videos on how to start your smoker. You're gonna find a recipe that works for you of like what stuff do you shove in there. All right, so you're gonna need a nice quality smoker that's large. And you're going to need, so if you're buying stuff and they're like, hey, here's a hive brush for this one, and it's $1 more or whatever to buy this tool set, but go ahead, get the thing that has the hive brush. This can be handy for just brushing off bees to put something down in place. So a little hive brush, this shouldn't cost you very much at all. And then hive tools, okay? The tool that looks like this, the paint scraper tool, that's really what it is a paint scraper. This tool can be used for any of the hives that you buy. So 10 bucks, you can even find it in the painting aisle. You don't have to buy this in a beekeeping catalog. Okay. If you get the Langstroth framed hives, you may invest in this tool, which has a little J on the end for leveraging out the frames. Do you need this tool? No, you're totally fine using this tool. However, I want you to know that this tool is not really useful in the other hives, the top bar hive or the Warre hive. This is your all around. This is your specialty tool with the little J on it. Okay, so you're gonna need a smoker. How much is that gonna cost? 25, 30 bucks. You're gonna need a $10 tool, a little $5 brush. Okay, so right there, the price tags for the tools aren't that bad. The one and only other thing that you really need now is a veil system, some PPE for between you and the bees. Okay, so you can buy just a veil, okay, and then wear long sleeves, go gloveless, long pants, tuck your pants into your socks or whatever, or into your muck boots. I wear muck boots, and you can just have a veil that, you know, hey, a veil just goes over your head. And so here's the thing, the most vulnerable part of your body that you want to protect are your eyes. And if you have hair that's of any length, the bees can fly in only one direction. So they'll only keep flying further and further into your long hair if you have long hair. All right, you need to make sure that you protect your eyes. You are only born with 2 of them. And bees instinctively, if they get defensive, will go right for your eyes. When you're wearing this veil, you'll be so thankful when you see a bee ping right off the front of it, right where your eye is. You're like, oh my God, thank you. Now, I would encourage you to get a jacket veil combo, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So, so this has a veil zippered in and attached to a jacket. And so I'll go ahead and I'll put this on. This is like the last thing. This is going to go for about $100 in that range, okay? It has these little loops that keeps your sleeves up. You typically have to buy these your size or one size up. You want some breathability and some movement. This is a piece of equipment that you don't want to fit like a pair of like yoga pants, okay? The fact that it's loose means that if a bee stings the fabric, it doesn't actually go to your skin. If it were tight up against your skin, then they could actually still pump a little venom through the fabric and stuff like that. So you want it to be loose. We're almost done here. The other thing is a set of gloves, okay? So, you know, 10, 20 bucks all day long for a decent set of gloves. And they telescope over over your hand like that. So again, imagine one on each side. I'm not gonna do that. Mine are stained from use and everything. So I would advise that you get a set of gloves, a veil, and a jacket combo, and that you just wear long pants when you go out, you know, and you just make sure that, like, when you do this, there's no like little midriff exposed and stuff like that, or when you bend over for lifting and stuff like that. Even in the summer months, I know it's hot, it can be uncomfortable to wear this, but it's important. And here's the thing, if you get stung on your hands, I've been keeping bees for years. I still, every time I go out, I wear gloves because it makes me comfortable. I know that if I get stung on my hands, I'm probably gonna jerk, I might drop the frame, I might drop the comb, and then bees are gonna be everywhere, I'm gonna upset them. I wear gloves just because, like, it makes me more comfortable. There is no shame in wearing gloves, and there is absolutely no shame in wearing a veil. I think that you are stupid when you don't wear a veil because, again, you're only born with two eyes. And so the way these jackets work is they zip up, and then the veil flips over, and then the zippers zip in from either side, and then there's a Velcro patch that goes over it. I'm not going to zip the whole thing because actually once I did this workshop and I was on a video and I had the whole thing zipped, and then I couldn't get the darn thing off of myself, and then it was kind of silly. So really, we're there. We're right there with the basic things that you need. So as I go back to the presentation, I just want to make sure there's nothing else I forgot. So I have put together an Amazon like list, a recommendation list. So there's a link in the documents where you can find the veil, the smoker, the tools, the books. So here's the thing, is that the books that are listed here, there are even comments. When you click on this for the Amazon link, it'll be like, hey, get this book. This is the #1 book if you're gonna get a top bar book. Get this book if you're getting a Warray hive. Get this book if you want to, I don't have it, if you want to build your own beehives. So I think that's, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Expect the first year, time involved. So just the, you know, final things here is what to expect in your first year. Don't expect to harvest any honey. Expect that you're going to let the bees have everything that they make that first year. And the real time involved is going to be like weekly inspections in the beginning for the first month or so. Then you start to transition to monthly inspections, generally. So that's really like it for the time involved, okay? Now, if you have 2 hives, your inspection time is just going to be like a little bit longer each time you inspect, but there's going to be some efficiency in having multiple hives and inspecting them all at once, lighting the smoker once for all those hives. Remember, there's a lot of cost when you add another hive, but you don't have to buy another smoker or another veil or whatever. Those costs are a one-time thing. And so here's the other thing I would say to expect. Expect your bees to die your first year, and then be happy if they don't. I know that's like a morbid thing to say, and it's not very positive. However, there's a lot of things that you could accidentally do wrong, you know, and so you need to go into this knowing that you need to read lots of books, you need to watch lots of videos, but when you watch those videos, you need to ask yourself, where are they? Are they down south? Because the way they keep bees down south ain't the same way that we keep bees up here in the north. And you need to take information with a grain of salt. Just like there is misinformation out there in the political world, the beekeeping world has just as much misinformation out there. So you need to find mentors, you need to find authors, you need to find people who create stuff and local people who you trust and who are speaking the same kind of way that you want to keep bees, and learn from them, learn from their successes. And that's it. So I guess we're looking at any questions that we might have. I'll stop my screen share. Thank you. Any questions? I don't know.
I don't see any questions, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming. It's so enjoyable hearing you speak. You're so passionate.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.